Welcome to the show where we unearth new ways of looking at ever-evolving life around the world, seen from a number of different industries, cultures, and backgrounds. But there's one thing that unites everyone I speak to. They all want to do their part to make the world better in their own unique ways. It's a uniting passion. Whether they're from the commercial world, third sector, or public sector, from the global north or the global south, my name is Philippa White, and welcome to TIE Unearthed. Hello and welcome to episode 31 of TIE Unearthed. Today I'm speaking with Vanessa Barboni Hallik, founder and CEO of Another Tomorrow, a woman's sustainable fashion startup and what New York Times described as a brand as ethically minded as it is refined. Vanessa walked away from a successful career in investment banking to launch Another Tomorrow and has been committed from the outset to sourcing responsibly grown, ethically manufactured materials, blending classic design with technology-enabled transparency, while building a platform for education and advocacy and contributing to the circular economy. We'll talk about her early life and architectural ambitions, her journey to an investment banking career, and then why she changed course and challenged the system. So grab your favorite beverage or throw on those running shoes and enjoy this chat with Vanessa. Hi, Vanessa. It's so lovely to have you joining us today.
It's such a huge pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Listen, I find your story fascinating. Obviously, we got connected over LinkedIn, I think, wasn't it? We were part of a chain of comments, which I then started digging deeper into what you're doing. And then we obviously had the conversation and I was just so inspired. And I'm just really, really excited to have you here so you can share your amazing story. So for our listeners, can you tell us your background?
No, absolutely. I'll try and give the long story short, only because I think that what I'm doing now really kind of represents my life full circle. So I'm American and I grew up in the Midwest in a sort of hippie, academic, techie sort of enclave. First in Iowa and then in Western Pennsylvania and in Ohio. My mother was an artist. And my dad was this kind of techie sociology professor. And so really kind of grew up just loving the intersection of disciplines. And this idea of kind of conscious consumerism was really sort of, in the water, so to speak. So I kind of grew up with, the Whole Earth catalog, and I still have these visions of these, geodesic domes that I wanted to build in my backyard. So really, I think that I never fully appreciated the gift that was growing up, but it was such a rich childhood. And, funny enough, I thought I would be an architect. Really that idea of, that sort of melding of design and science and technology. And I did kind of a crazy 180 in college. My mom passed when I was really young. And I think just sort of subliminally, I just shifted to this kind of focus on, taking care of myself and protection and what have you. And I actually ended up in finance. So after turning to an economics major, I sort of accidentally ended up in finance. I had applied for all these, grand fellowships. I got none of those and most of the finance jobs.
So what happened to architecture? Or you just didn't go down that route in the end? Like what happened?
I didn't. And, I think it was a combination of things. One, I spent some time talking to architects in their 20s and 30s, and it's a tough road, right?
It is a tough road.
And I think that I got pretty real about what practicing might mean. But more than that, it was, really, my mom was the artist in our family. And I think that I knew that I had to take care of myself and I just kind of took this less risky path, honestly.
Yeah,
and I don't know that I fully understood the choice at the time, but, I made a pretty significant pivot. I will say that I actually did go back to even look at doing a master's exploratory program at Columbia in architecture later, just to make sure that
you made the right decision.
Yes. And I'm still pretty sure I made the right decision. I'm still pretty sure. So I, checked that box, which
Yeah.
I feel good about now. But, that passion's sort of always been there. But I did end up in finance and with a focus on emerging markets, which, as kind of, a girl from the cornfields was just amazing. I really got to travel the world and loved sort of the intersections at which emerging economies sit, because unfortunately it is most often the case that one does not make sort of one's own bed, and there's so many external forces that one is buffeted by. So really I did enjoy the sort of intellectual piece of the political, the socioeconomic, the economic. It was very, very interesting. But I spent really kind of the latter 2/3 of my career at Morgan Stanley, kind of rebuilding and building back up, these emerging markets businesses that across the industry had kind of gotten hit pretty hard in the financial crisis. And that was kind of my first taste, I think, really at kind of intrapreneurship, and loved it. And loved building teams, loved solving client problems, really just enjoyed that aspect of it in particular. But I was super focused throughout on, how the heck was I going to take my skill set and my energy and try and build something that felt super purposeful and lasting. And in 2017, I really just hit the place where it was just time to make a change. And I said, what do I want the next 20 years to be about? And for me, it was really clear that the answer to that had to be purpose. I had to drive my energy in that direction. And I thought initially that I was actually just going to switch gears and move from a focus on emerging markets into ESG, ostensibly on the asset management side. And the firm was great, and I ended up taking a sabbatical. And then sort of a funny thing happened. I figured, well, gosh, before I'm part of an investment process that seeks to redirect and deploy capital along the lines of environmental, social, and governance factors to more positive impact, I should really have a better sense of how these major industries are throwing off these major externalities, negative externalities, these unintended consequences. And for the most part, is fairly understandable to anyone who's been following, markets and industry for any kind of material period of time. But the one that really caught me off guard was actually the apparel industry. And I was just shocked by the magnitude of the problem, the complexity of the problem, the overall opacity of the industry, including to those who actually operate in it.
Talk to us about it, because I think obviously this was a huge turning point for you.
Yeah.
What did you learn?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that the impact was far more sort of deep and kind of insidious than I thought. I had this understanding at the outset that the industry could be incredibly wasteful, and that in particular that there were, some pretty severe labor issues in fast fashion in particular. But I really didn't have that nuanced perspective that, number one, clothing is basically either an agricultural product or it's made of oil. There's not a whole lot in between. And there's some pretty significant implications to both of those. So, cotton rather, as a crop takes up, a very small percentage of our global cropland, but is one of the biggest users of chemical insecticides, and pesticides and fertilizers, with huge impacts on biodiversity and health. So that's just an example on the agricultural side. And then on the plastic side, it's one of the biggest contributors of, microfibers in our oceans. So, I really didn't have that kind of nuanced perspective in terms of like sort of at both the raw material stage and then the sort of degradation stage, the level of problem there. I also equally did not appreciate that the issue of labor and living wages is not just a problem of fast fashion. It's very much endemic to fast fashion, but it really includes a pretty wide swath of industry, which is incredibly problematic. And then, third, kind of going to the animal welfare piece, there's also, just a huge degree of impact on animals and supply chains. And so really, it was just eye-opening on so many levels, and just shocking. I mean, just genuinely, really quite shocking. And what was interesting to me was that in addition to that, we've been on this path really for the last 30, 35 years of going from supply chains in apparel that were already fairly problematic, but relatively more vertical, where suppliers were either owned by companies or at least very known by companies, to this situation where production had just spread out all over the world, really driven by lowest cost and outsourced, with very little visibility and very little accountability. And so many large companies really just fundamentally did not know their supply chains. And so how on earth are you going to start to make better decisions if you're not accountable to your supply chain, right?
And obviously you're realizing this as you're trying to figure out, obviously, environmental, social, and governance factors, and realizing, hold on a second, people don't know the supply chains. I mean,
they don't even know.
Yeah. I mean, how can you do that if you don't know?
Totally. I mean, forget about managing what you measure. I mean, if you don't even know what it is to measure in the first place, I mean, it's crazy. So it was just wild. And, no surprise, the amount of information that consumer is going to get from a company that doesn't even know themselves, or certainly isn't proud of, if they do know, is going to be pretty meager. So, I looked at some of the other consumer verticals that have moved really far ahead of apparel. And I think about food, and I think about, to some extent, even other areas of CPG like beauty. And challenger brands had a pretty material impact, not so much on changing supply chains in aggregate, because these are all fragmented markets, but on shifting norms. And I thought, gosh, there's a huge opportunity in the apparel industry, in the fashion industry, for more challenger brands, particularly outside of the outdoor sphere, where I think there have been some, really fantastic players like Patagonia. Patagonia. There's been so much organic sort of alignment with our customer base, given shared values, but in other parts of the market as well, to really move the needle in terms of modeling what was possible in terms of how you could operate as a company, but also shifting expectations for consumers about how companies would operate and how they would communicate with them.
So you're seeing these dynamics. You're obviously now feeling that there's a real purpose shouting for your direction. I mean, you then walk away from a successful career in investment banking. What was that? What happened? What was the catalyst to that happening? And what inspired you to want to challenge the system?
It's such a strange thing to communicate, because so many people have, well, maybe not so many people, a good number of people have communicated like this to me, and I could never really understand it, but until it sort of happened to me. And it was just, I couldn't not do it. And I don't know how else to describe it other than that. I mean, I really felt compelled to do this like nothing else in my life. And it was just information I could not unknow and I couldn't turn away from. And, and I felt like I had something to offer. I think so. It's sort of fundamentally those two things. And, I could have stayed in finance. But I was, I couldn't not take the risk. And I thought, I've got to give this a shot. I'll never forgive myself if I don't. I feel like there's something really to do here. And so, I did spend a bunch of months doing research first before I pulled the trigger. So
that's always fun, isn't it? I remember well when I was sort of doing up until 1 o'clock in the morning after a full day's work, trying to pull together my business plan and the thinking and oh God, it's exhausting. But yeah, it's also really motivating and exciting when you sort of see something starting to come together. So yeah, I can imagine that was exhausting, but exciting to see that.
Yeah, no, it was great. And I mean, I was super lucky because I had taken this sabbatical and they were super generous. They're so generous. And I probably had a dangerous amount of time on my hands to hatch a plan. But But yeah, I incorporated during that sabbatical and really spent a good 4 months doing some, pretty significant research to make sure that I felt like there was really something there. And then that was terrifying. Pulling the plug was genuinely terrifying. I still remember it was May 1st, 2018. And yeah, it was scary, but it was great.
And talk to us about what you're doing now. What is this?
Yes. So another tomorrow, we really think about ourselves as innovating at the intersection of sustainability, design, and technology currently to reinvent fashion. So we're an end-to-end sustainable luxury brand that integrates technology to deliver transparency and a full circular economy through owned resale. And we're really here to treat clothing as an asset. So I kind of hate the word luxury. It kind of makes my skin crawl, and I say it to sort of connote quality. But really, we think about at the core of the problem of this industry is that we stopped treating clothing like an asset and we started to treat it as if it's disposable. So how do we start to democratize access to really high quality clothing? And how do we keep it in circulation for as long as possible, as kind of like the antithesis of the system as it currently works? And
Yeah.
so that's really what Another Tomorrow does. It's a women's wear brand today. And the broader ambition is to continue to add value both for people and planet through innovating at this intersection of design and sustainability and technology.
Wow. You drew a parallel with Patagonia. And I mean, that's their marketing as well, isn't it? It's, own
Yeah.
less. And that's is how it should be, really. I mean, that's fantastic. Talk to us about some of the biggest surprises that you've had on this journey, and, good and bad. What's been hard, but also what's been really eye-opening and exciting?
Oh, gosh, there's so so many good examples in both buckets. I guess I'll start with maybe a little bit of a mix of the two. So first, I mean, we were shocked that given how much sustainability was at least part of the lexicon, 3 years ago when we were getting started, at how much we struggled to actually find materials that really would bring together the kind of level of quality and craft with sustainability. We just couldn't find anything. And so we ended up making almost entirely custom materials. But in order to do that, it actually brought us all the way back to the farm. And so we source, for example, our wool from these two ethical farms in Tasmania. And
Wow.
if you had asked me at the beginning, oh, are you going to be sourcing raw materials directly at the farm? I would have said you were crazy. But that's actually what we felt that we had to do based on, what our animal welfare and environmental welfare, human welfare parameters were. And we learned so much from that process. And this goes to one of the positive things that I've learned, which is just that, sustainability is inherently local, and what makes sense in one place doesn't make sense in another place. And so really having that connection back to the farm, that grounding in science kind of became the cornerstone for how we source everything. And so that was an incredible experience. And really one of the major positives that I've taken away from this is just how much I've actually just learned from people at every single step of the value chain, and how inherently collaborative this industry is, which is, not something candidly I experience really in finance. Finance is not the most collaborative industry. Not a word that you hear a lot. I mean, there are exceptions to that, of course, but and part of that is because the industry is made up of so many people that are in very specialized roles, and they all have to come together to make it all happen. And so there's just that sort of inherently collaborative nature of bringing together people of different disciplines and expertise, and that's just been incredible. From the farm to chemical specialists and mills and craftspeople and technologists. I've just learned an incredible amount from people. And I think that there's a lot of hugely positive intention to do things better, which I think is, these are all super positives. I think on the negative side, I think that generally speaking, the press narrative and the marketing narrative around sustainability just moves so much faster than reality. And that I think is particularly problematic because it gives a perception that a lot has changed. And I think that's really dangerous at a time when real change needs to happen really fast.
Yeah, right.
And so, you look at that messaging and it's really easy to forget, but oh, wait, it's still the case that more than half of clothing ends up in a landfill within a year. And it's still the case that organic cotton is something like 1% of the global cotton supply. And it's still the case that nothing has meaningfully changed in terms of garment workers and the fact that over 90% of them don't earn a living wage. And yet it feels like if you're just reading the headlines and you're just looking at marketing, that a lot has changed. And so that to me is a major issue. And it's really brought to life for me just how critically important regulation is.
Yeah.
And not a sexy topic, and no one likes to talk about it, but I think that it's something I believe in really, really strongly, just because the economic incentives are so strong not to move this tanker too quickly. And we just don't have the luxury of that time. So I'm a big believer in regulation. That really formed the basis of why we do so much work on the advocacy side of things as a company.
Talk to us about because it's an interesting one when you were talking about the marketing and how basically the consumer isn't actually aware. One of the problems that you're obviously aware of and the reason why you set up Another Tomorrow, but also, like you said, marketing moves quicker than what is actually happening. How is your transparency? How do you educate your customers? How does that work? Because it's a big job. It's also exciting because it's an educational job. How does that work? How do you get the message out?
So we've learned that, and I guess this probably won't be surprising, but everyone digests information in different ways and with different levels of curiosity. And so, we really approach it from a bunch of different levels. So on the one hand, because every single product that we make has its own unique digital identity, we can communicate with extreme specificity, granularity at the product level. So you can scan a QR code on the care content label, and you can see not just the entire provenance of the product, but why we actually made the decisions that we did. Wow. Across the supply chain.
That's so
and
cool.
Where we think we can do better. So I love that, particularly because I think that it shows that it's possible, and hopefully it starts to shift the bar for how consumers expect companies to communicate. So I think that transparency is a big piece of it. We also put that information on the product detail pages of the website. And then we have a really, really extensive sustainability section that really breaks down, all of our policies and again, why we make the decisions that we do about materials we use, materials we don't use. That's kind of been the most popular part of that section. And then the third, really kind of the third way that we communicate is by funding long form narrative journalism. And
oh God, that's so great.
This is one of my favorite things that we do. And we don't do a huge amount of it because honestly it's expensive to do. Yeah. And with COVID, it's hard for people to travel, and you actually have to get back to source in many cases to really do this well. But one of the things that I learned early on in these customer, or at the time prospective customer focus groups, was that where people actually made some pretty substantive shifts in their purchasing decisions, it was through information that they learned in this format. Because I think that as humans, we really connect with this idea of storytelling.
Yeah, totally.
And to be able to do that in a very factual, high quality journalistic way. It's just not something that you see much in, even in mainstream press. So we did a really long piece on organic cotton. We did another one on the wool industry. So I guess in short, we really kind of throw the kitchen sink at it to answer your question.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, there's so much there, and there's a lot of opportunity for content, and yes. And the more transparent you are, the more that your customers trust you, want to know more, buy into your story, buy into your reason for being. It's fantastic. And I saw something recently. You've opened a shop.
Yes, yes,
Talk to
indeed.
us about that. That's a big deal.
Yeah, we're super excited. You know, I think it's so important to be able to have real conversations and build community. And so it's been on our really kind of on our roadmap for ages. We had planned to open actually one right before COVID hit. Thank goodness we didn't sign that lease. That would have
Yeah,
been
that would have been a tough one.
fairly terrible.
Yeah.
But so we waited, and this opportunity came up at the end of last year. And so it's basically kind of we think about as our first kind of flagship retail, but really it's a space for dialogue as much as it is a space for shopping. So people can obviously touch and feel and try on the
I was
product
going to
and
say,
scan
like,
it.
that makes such a difference as well, because you talk to people there to understand, right?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, you just get so
It's a
much
different experience.
information, totally different experience, and really learn what's important to people and respond to their questions and they can scan the QR code in person before they purchase. But we have a great setup also for really for dialogue around substantive conversations around climate and also creative industries. So we're very excited. Actually, our first talk that we're going to be doing in September is with Maxine Beda with her new book out on the fashion industry,
Hmm.
which I'm really excited about.
Hmm. Wow. It really is bridging these worlds of your family, isn't it? The artist and
Yes,
I mean, it comes full circle, doesn't it?
it really does. It's pretty funny.
It's beautiful. And, it's funny as well because I studied business and I mean, I talk about this quite a bit actually, but I remember chanting at business school, the main goal of business is to make money. I was like, oh my God, this just makes me feel a bit ill. And my family come from the sort of, I call it the helping people industries. And it, if I look at what I'm doing now, it's, did I love chanting that at business school? No. Did I realize that that didn't really suit me? Yes. But I'm actually so pleased that I studied business because I learned what I needed to learn to make what I, do now. And the helping people industries helped in sort of inspire what Thai does. And I just think it's funny, isn't it? How life is almost like puzzle pieces, it all kind of fits together eventually. And you maybe don't know the
Yeah.
path that it's going in, but then suddenly you start to see this picture start to unfold. You're like, God, everything happens for a reason. I needed to do that. That was all part of the plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I feel that. Tell me, who inspires you?
Oh, so many people. I've actually, so I've sort of maybe selfishly have put together this series through the company called Women for Tomorrow. And I take so much inspiration from, you know, women, people in general, but women also who are really leading with such tremendous courage and vulnerability in their industries. And so we kind of pulled together this group of people and we profile them. And so many of the people that I admire are part of that. So the first person that we profiled, who I just adore and look up to, is Paula Mendoza, who is one of the co-founders of the Women's March. She's also an incredible filmmaker and activist, and really has done such amazing work on immigration issues in this country. So she was one of the first. Jacqueline Novogratz, who's become an amazing personal friend and just such a pioneer in the area of impact, as the founder and CEO of Acumen Fund.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's just amazing. But so many women. So I mean, I suppose my inspirations are kind of, fairly far and wide. But just really it's kind of, I think about it as like, the originals who just have the courage to kind of boldly push forward and create change, either as artists or entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs, because I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage, I think, to create
Totally
change
agree.
within large
Absolutely.
organizations. In many cases, more.
Yeah, agree.
So it's maybe not the most succinct answer, but I think that I find constant inspiration, and I find I'm just in awe of so many people doing such amazing work right now.
Now, where do you hope to see your company in the next 10 years?
I suppose it goes back to that sort of Patagonia as North Star, and insofar as we really want to be a company of global significance that is innovating, continuously innovating at this intersection of design, technology, sustainability, um, to continue to kind of drive the frontier further of what we can accomplish for both people and planet. And so we want to be a big global brand that's modeling change at every step of the way. And so that's the goal.
It's exciting. Tell me, what haven't I asked you that you'd like to tell our listeners?
Well, I would love to put in a plug for our advocacy work
Yeah,
because,
please.
while while we always love to have more customers, we genuinely want to be in service of a broader community far beyond those who may or may not connect with the product. And so, we're doing some, I think, important work to amplify some pretty specific and hot button current issues. And so, we're currently working on a combination of um, supporting change in the old growth forests in British Columbia and stopping the
Oh,
logging. It's like such a huge issue. One of the, a massive carbon sink, home to immense biodiversity, one of few temperate rainforests in the world. And, they're logging trees, the width of your living room and as high as the Empire State Building, like on a daily basis. So it's pretty devastating. So that's an area where, the Canadian government really needs to hear from everybody. It's not just a local issue.
how can people find you in this movement?
So if you go to the magazine section of our website, there's a host of petitions. And so you can find that one there. We've been working with Canopy and with Ancient Forest Alliance on that petition. So I really encourage people to look up that
And
one.
your website would be anothertomorrow.com?
Anothertomorrow.co.
.co. Okay, so
Yeah, anothertomorrow.co.
anothertomorrow.co. Mhm.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of petitions under that area. There are others that relate back to banning chlorpyrifos, which is a pesticide that's used not just on cotton but on crops more broadly, and it's used globally. There's one on garment worker initiative as well, and another on animal welfare in the wool industry. So there's kind of something for something for everyone, I
Yeah.
suppose. But these are, highly specific issues that that touch the industry, that touch the planet, and that I think are, sometimes kind of fly under the radar, but make a really huge difference.
Great. Well, everyone should check that out. Also, it's possible to buy clothes on the site, and I think in New
Indeed.
York, yeah, and in New York is where the shop is. Is that correct?
Yep, 384 Bleecker.
384.
Yep, 384 Bleecker.
Okay, good. Oh, Vanessa, listen, it has been a huge pleasure to chat with you. Super inspiring. Your mom would be very proud.
Well, thank you. Well, it's an enormous pleasure to be speaking with you, and I'm equally inspired and honored to be a part of your community.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, listen, it's great to connect with like-minded souls, and I just can't wait to follow your journey. And I'm going to be checking out your website as well. So take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Hey everyone, this is Philippa again. I hope you enjoyed listening. Now this is your chance to get involved with TIE. If you work in the commercial world, whatever your profession, your position, or your experience, then TIE could be for you. You may have been in business for decades, but have always felt there's another way. Or you may just have a few years experience, but want to do more. Equally, if you want to create game-changing employees and see your company impact the world, we've got you covered. TIE has never been more necessary than right now, and you can be a part of it. Reach out to me at philippa@theinternationalexchange.co.uk and I can tell you more. Or join the TIE Accelerator info session for more information. apply.tieaccelerator.com. Better leaders, better companies, better world. I'm your host, Philippa White. This podcast has been co-produced by Berna Vieira and me, music by Berna Vieira, and artwork by Kelps Vahais. I hope we'll meet again soon.